Donald Trump's tariffs have destroyed selling on Amazon, or have they? Let's be honest, we are living in a world where we have no idea what will happen tomorrow. When running a business, that uncertainty is a huge problem. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last few days, you will have heard about Donald Trump's tariffs. So let's break down exactly what they are and what they mean for Amazon sellers. How they affect you will massively depend on where you sell and what your business model is. In this video, I'm going to cover how these tariffs will affect people selling in the US marketplace, the UK, the Europe, and the rest of the world. I'm also going to cover how the different business models are affected, whether that be private label, wholesale, or online and retail arbitrage. If you hang around to the end, I'm going to tell you why I think there is still so much money to be made selling on Amazon and why the different business models have been flipped on their heads. Understanding Trump's tariffs. Before we dive into the impacts, let's first understand exactly what these tariffs are, because let's face it, a lot of very important people don't seem to understand. Donald Trump has announced significant tariff increases. I'll be honest, I've filmed this a few times now because the tariffs keep changing, but the latest figures seem to show that China will be hit with 104% tariffs on all imports to the US. There's also blanket tariffs of between 10 to 20% across the entire world, including an island only inhabited by penguins. For Amazon sellers, this is going to be game-changing, and not in a good way. The vast majority of products sold on Amazon are manufactured in China, or at least have components manufactured in China. Even products assembled elsewhere often contain products or materials from China. Whilst Donald Trump has been shouting for months that this is a tax on China, and other countries for that matter, the reality is it's an import tax paid by the American importer and ultimately passed on to the American consumer in the form of price increases. There are already websites including a tariff surcharge line on their checkout. What impact will this have on different marketplaces? Obviously, the US marketplace will get hit the hardest, but other marketplaces, including the UK, will not go unscathed. The stock markets around the world are plummeting, which just shows you how interlinked the worldwide economies are. How will the different business models be affected in the US marketplace? Private label will be hit hard. The vast majority of private label products are manufactured in China. The obvious solution is to simply increase your prices, but that relies on two important factors. Firstly, will the customer be happy to pay the increased price? And secondly, will Chinese sellers, your competitors, also increase their prices? Of course the Chinese sellers will increase their prices. The tariffs apply to them too. Well, not necessarily. The thing is, Chinese sellers don't exactly follow the same rules as us. The Chinese sellers don't register US entities like LLCs. They're therefore remote businesses with no permanent establishment in the US. This means they don't pay US tax, and all tax owed is owed in China. These taxes are either much lower or more likely not in force. They also don't have the same liability issues as a US seller. Suing a Chinese seller for intellectual property infringement or product recall issues is near on impossible. But, of course, this was always the case even before tariffs. So how will they get around them? The most likely methods will be under-declaring the value of goods. Fairly self-explanatory, but if they declare a lower value, they pay a lower amount in tariffs. Misclassification of products, meaning classifying something in a different category to get a lower tariff. Currently, these tariffs seem to be blanket tariffs, so I'm not sure how applicable this method will be, but time will tell. Shipping via a third country, potentially repackaging or relabeling in that country, and therefore taking advantage of a lower tariff. Setting up assembly units in a third country, shipping all components from China to that country, and therefore making the product in a country with lower tariffs. Falsifying country of origin labels. Fairly self-explanatory, but changing a label from made in China to made in Taiwan would mislead customs officials and therefore pay a lower tariff. Take this American flag, for example. clearly states that it is made in America. However, it is obviously made in China. Yet, unfortunately, Amazon have done nothing to clamp down on this. Prepare yourselves to see far more of this going forward. All of these methods, of course, are open to every seller. However, they are illegal, and if caught, you would face serious consequences. So why would a Chinese seller take the risk when a US seller wouldn't? Simply put, the consequences for a Chinese seller just aren't there. Because of the way they structure their companies, there's no one there to take the blame in the US. And although the US can stop a specific company from trading, they simply have an untraceable shell company ready to step in. And it's a similar situation when it comes to their Amazon seller accounts. If one account gets banned, they have an army of approved accounts ready to go at a moment's notice. So what does that mean for private label sellers? Increasing prices seems inevitable. Depending on your relationship with your suppliers, they may be willing to share some of the pain. But with the way the tensions between the two countries are escalating, and with the potential of more tariffs on the horizon, this seems like a long shot. Trying to move manufacturing is the obvious next step, but with the tariffs being worldwide and other countries being more expensive than China anyway, otherwise you'd already be manufacturing there, this move probably isn't going to be particularly easy. A lot of sellers will already be manufacturing elsewhere, but with the tariffs being worldwide, margins will still take a hit. That leaves moving manufacturing to the US. Whilst this would solve a lot of problems, the reality is it is going to be very difficult. Most goods that are imported to the US are done so because there is no manufacturing of that type of product in the US. For some categories though, there are already manufacturing operations in the US, but they do come with huge downsides. It's usually 3 to 4 times the price to manufacture, terrible at communication and engagement. Most companies don't respond, and even if they do, it can take them months. They'll charge you for all the samples of the products you're looking to make, and even if you can get past all of this, chances are the supply chain of materials is going to be coming from outside the US anyway. So, is this the end for private label? Definitely not, but a lot will go out of business. And this is the theme for all of the Amazon business models. Businesses that are run well, with a good head for numbers, a good customer focus, and a willingness to adapt, will survive. How will private label sellers be affected in other marketplaces? Obviously, if you're selling in other marketplaces like the UK, then the tariffs on China won't affect you. Then obviously you won't be affected by tariffs unless you're buying from the US, which is probably unlikely. The biggest concern for you and for us is what is going to happen to the global economy. Are we heading for an economic crash like we did in 2008? Cost of living is already hard. What will consumer spending power be? Realistically, at this stage, nobody knows. What is likely to happen, however, is as China's trade with the US reduces, they'll be looking to fill the gap elsewhere. This could take 2 forms. They could raise their prices to fill the gap elsewhere, but I think the most likely outcome is they'll be looking to increase their business relationships with businesses and companies outside of America, meaning there may well be some very good opportunities on the horizon. What about wholesale and online arbitrage? Again, the US will be hit hardest. Goods on Amazon are imported from all over the world, and price increases are inevitable. How will wholesale change? If you haven't already, you need to speak to your suppliers. What are they looking to do, and how are they planning and adjusting? Realistically, the prices are going to go up, and most likely they'll pass on the entire tariff to you. But understanding exactly what they're looking to do is crucial. An obvious move will be to focus on American brands, but again, a lot of these are manufactured outside of America, so will still be hit with tariffs. Understanding which of your products come from where will massively help. As wholesalers try to adapt, they may ask you to take larger quantities in order to reduce their risk. Be careful with this. We're entering an era of uncertainty. Current sales volume will take a hit as the price increases. And with the volatility of this administration, it's not unthinkable that the tariffs will get removed or reduced for some products, meaning you could well be left holding months worth of stock that you have to sell for a loss. There are some positives though. The stock you're currently holding is pre-tariff stock. This means that in a month or two, most pre-tariff stock will have sold out, and you'll be sat on a gold mine as prices increase. If your cash flow can allow you to hold the stock, it may well be the sensible move. What about wholesale changes across the rest of the world? Similarly to private label, unless you're imported from America, you won't be paying the tariffs. But we are going to be hit with a general price increase as the global economy realigns. The biggest thing to watch out for will be sales volume as consumer spending tightens. There will be a huge amount of stock earmarked for America, which will now be looking for new homes. This could actually cause a oversaturation of products in certain markets, and therefore we could actually see hefty price decreases. Avoid huge quantities to make sure you're not stuck with overpriced stock, and try to find out from brands where the surplus in stock is going. Finally, onto online and retail arbitrage. This is where it gets interesting. People doing private label and wholesale look down on arbitrage as the weakest business model. They claim it's not a real business. But let's be honest, they're probably just trying to sell you their course or services. But in my opinion, these tariffs have completely flipped the script. Online and retail arbitrage are currently the safest business models in my opinion. So why am I so bullish? Think about what the model is. We buy low from retailers, we sell high on Amazon. When prices go up, they'll go up on both. There will be a strange period for a month or two where there is still some in-country stock. So again, if you're in a position to hold on to it, you may be really well placed to cash in at a later date. By nature of arbitrage, we're buying in much smaller quantities, so our risk at any one time isn't huge. But there are two elements of arbitrage that are going to allow us to thrive amongst this turmoil. The beauty of arbitrage is how low the barrier of entry is, but this can also be a problem. The market floods with people who don't really know what they're doing and are just looking to make a quick buck. These people will struggle, they don't understand what they're doing, and you can see it already. Global tariffs have just been introduced and sellers are still coming on the listing and tanking them. These people are doomed, but that just makes our lives, real sellers, a lot easier. The second thing that's got me really excited is how retailers will react. In retail, cash is king and uncertainty is hell. This combination is why there are so many sales and discounts. Companies need to keep their product moving. They have overheads that can't be ignored, and this is where we make our money. As prices rise and sellers' disposable income reduces, retailers will have no option but to discount products to keep them moving. But what about Amazon? Will people still use it? Sounds crazy, but I think people will turn to Amazon more. When people are struggling for money, they stop shopping for leisure and pleasure. This means they can no longer pick up their essentials whilst they're just out shopping. They have to make a conscious effort to go and buy what they need. And where does everyone do that? Amazon, of course. This brings me on to strategy. There will no doubt be a consumer mindset shift, bigger necessity for essential products, and far less reliance on luxury products. If you can pivot accordingly, you'll be flying. One thing that is certain, and I have absolutely no doubt about this, is money is tight. And for all the reasons I've just explained, I believe that right now is the best time to start. Online arbitrage is going from strength to strength, not just as a side hustle, but as a proper business. So, have Trump's tariffs destroyed Amazon? The answer is clearly no, but they have definitely changed the game. These tariffs will create winners and losers. The losers will be those that resist change, fail to adapt, and continue with business as usual. The winners will be those that see these changes as an opportunity to innovate, differentiate, and ultimately strengthen their business. Remember, every major economic shift creates both challenges and opportunities. The key is to stay informed, remain flexible, and position yourself to benefit from these changes rather than be victimized by them. If you found this video useful, please hit the like button and subscribe for further content on how to navigate this crazy world of e-commerce. Drop your questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear, have these changes already affected you? And how are you planning to adapt to make the most of these changes? I've got a very exciting announcement coming in the next few weeks, which will help you create your own thriving Amazon FBA business. Turn your notifications on so you hear first, because there's going to be an excellent opportunity for a lucky few. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.